In this training, we'll learn about the Housing First model approach to homelessness, what it is, how it works, and why it works. ABCCM Supportive Services for Veteran Families program operates under the Housing First model and has been changing the lives of veterans and their families across Western North Carolina since 2013. Housing First is an evidence-based approach to homelessness that started in the United States in the early 90s. It offers an alternative to more traditional approaches such as emergency shelter and transitional housing, which are housing-ready models in which participants work their way through a program until they are ready for permanent housing. Instead, the Housing First model immediately connects participants to permanent housing, thus ending their homelessness, and then offers supportive services to assist in housing retention. Housing First programs have very few, if any, preconditions. This means that individuals who are actively using substances or who are unemployed can still participate in the program. It's important to remember that while housing is the primary goal of a Housing First program, there are more components to these programs than just housing. Services are progressive and can scale to each participant's needs. This isn't a cookie-cutter program where one size fits all. Services are specifically tailored to each individual and take into account their strengths and skills as well as their needs. In Housing First, we want to lower and remove all known barriers to permanent housing. This is why there are no preconditions to housing in our program. We house everyone. We don't require that participants beat their drug addiction first or save up a certain amount of money before we house them. We recognize that housing is a basic human right for everyone. We also understand that it's more challenging to address substance abuse, mental health, and employment issues if you're preoccupied with where you'll sleep that night. Once participants are housed, they can begin to stabilize and rebuild their lives, however they want it to look. You may wonder how participants who are actively using substances, who have neglected their mental and physical health care, or who have no source of income could possibly succeed in maintaining permanent housing. You may even doubt that such a program could be successful. But when it comes to predicting who will succeed in housing and who will fail, it turns out that we're usually very bad at predicting correctly. Our data, along with national studies dating back several decades, show that the vast majority of participants in Housing First programs are successfully housed and that they retain housing long after our program discharges them. In both the 2017 and 2018 grant years, 95% of participants discharged from our program were discharged into permanent housing. Of the 5% who were deemed unsuccessful, 4% simply chose other housing programs like transitional housing to meet their needs. In a 2017 follow-along project, ABCCM maintained contact with exited participants over an 18-month period. 91% of those participating in the project were still housed 18 months after discharge. Not only is Housing First successful in housing homeless individuals, it's also successful in ensuring long-term success in permanent housing. It's a common misconception that Housing First programs take homeless individuals off the street, stick them in an apartment, and then call it a day. Now, there may be programs operating this way and calling themselves Housing First, but this is not how Housing First programs are intended to work, and it's certainly not how ABCCM's programs work. Remember that while housing is a key component of our program, there are many other services that are vital in ensuring our participants stay in housing. In the last slide, you learned that upwards of 91% of ABCCM's participants are still housed a full year and a half after they were discharged. That's because we know how important supportive services are in stabilizing the participant once they are in housing and helping them develop a plan for long-term success. Our participants are offered individualized services, including case management, help developing a budget, getting a handle on their finances, assistance connecting with healthcare and substance abuse treatment, job training for career level employment, and many other services that are directly provided by ABCCM or one of many community providers. If you work in homeless services any length of time, you're sure to get this question. Don't some people want to be homeless? The answer is no. Well, okay, there may be a very rare exception, but as a general rule, this is a false assumption. No one says as a child, I want to be homeless when I grow up. And no adult wants to be homeless either. Sure, there are some people who find it very scary to live in a traditional home or in community with others. And they may even say that they don't want to be housed. But if we establish a trusting relationship with them and dig deeper, we'll find a different truth. They may prefer a more solitary lifestyle or the freedom to do as they please, and homelessness may meet some of those objectives. However, if given the opportunity to live the kind of life they want and have a roof over their head, everyone would choose housing. It's our job to continually reach out to those who are hard to house to let them know that we stand ready with the offer of permanent housing and to discover what kind of home they envision for themselves. There are two main goals in Housing First: to get participants housed and to keep them housed. As we've discussed, there are many other components to Housing First than just housing. But when it comes to measuring program success, these are our targets. It's important to house participants as soon as possible. Another name for Housing First is rapid rehousing. This alludes to the urgency housing plays in our program. As soon as the participant is enrolled in our program, housing them is our first goal, and we should work as quickly as possible. The reason is simple. We are a housing program, and the surest way to end an individual's episode of homelessness is to house them. This stage is where your knowledge of the local rental market and your relationships with landlords are critical. Our next goal is to wrap supports around the participant that will stabilize them and give them the tools and resources necessary so that they never re-enter homelessness. This is where your case management skills are essential. Help the participant identify what led to their homelessness and what's needed to ensure long-term success. The plan that you develop with a participant is a plan for their success. The work will continue long after they leave our program, so let's get them started out on the right foot. Here's an example of how a participant family might move through our services. We'll be reviewing the slide from left to right. First, we identify a participant family and verify they are homeless. We'll enroll them in our program and make sure they have access to safe shelter. We immediately begin work to identify and secure permanent housing. Once housing becomes available, we'll move the family in. We'll typically pay for security deposit, first month's rent, and utility deposits. Now it's time to connect them with health care, mental health services, food pantries, ensure that they have beds and mattresses, dishes, and all the essentials they'll need to feel safe and cared for. Next, we work with them to establish income if they don't already have it. This could be job training, helping them fill out employment applications, or assistance with their disability claim. It's a great time to revisit their budget now that you know how much their rent will be. Once they're settled, self-sufficient, and have achieved the essential goals on their plan, it's time to celebrate their success and discharge them from the program. If they need us in the future, we're only a phone call away. The average length of time a participant is in our program is around 90 days. Some participants are stable and ready for program discharge after a week, while others may need many more months to achieve their goals and become self-sufficient.